Hello, and welcome to our weekly IG Live series. We're going to be talking today with author Brittany J. Thurman. She's going to tell us all about her children's books. She does picture books and middle grade. So she's going to talk to us about that and also give us a little teaser about her appearance at the Louisville Book Festival, which is coming up very soon. If you haven't registered or checked it out yet, you really need to go and do that. And so she'll be telling us a little bit about her appearance as well as what inspired her to become an author. So it's going to be a really great chat. Hi.
Hey.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, why don't we just jump right in? I was just giving a little introduction, but maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, I would love to. I never know what to say, which is weird because I should be able to talk about myself, but I'm Brittany. I am a former children's specialist where I worked directly with kids, which I miss every single day, but I have the honor of writing for kids now. So I write picture books, I write nonfiction, I write middle grade novels, and turned in a chapter book not too long ago. So fingers crossed that sees itself out into the world one day. But I have been writing. When I go to school visits, I like to tell kids that I have been writing since the first grade. I have one of my first stories I ever wrote, and writing is just has had like this stronghold over my life. When I was younger, I would write as an outlet, and today I hope that I write kids books where kids can see themselves represented, see their life, or see ways in which they can view the world and live within this world.
Well, okay. Well, now I'm curious. So do you remember what that story was that you wrote in
Oh
first grade?
yeah. Yeah, I wish that I had it with me because I still have it. So I kept a lot of my backpack, my notebooks from elementary school. So I still have it. It's called Going for a Walk. The kids think that it's funny and silly. It's about a little girl who goes for a walk. She sees a cow. She says hi to the cow. The cow says moo. The little girl walks on, and it just kind of repeats over and over and over again. And so sometimes the kids, they think it's hilarious. Other times they're like, what? What is this? But yeah, I have that. And I have a couple of other stories that I wrote when I was a kid.
That's so great that you still have them. I don't
Mhm.
do things from when I was growing up, but I don't think I have any exactly like that, but that's wonderful. And so do you think you always had this idea of being a writer? I mean, you talked about how you always wrote, it was an outlet. Did you ever imagine you were going to be an author?
Yeah, so I think in many ways I wanted to know what it was like to be an author. I wanted to know how does my story that's on a piece of paper go from being on a piece of paper to a book. But honestly, as a kid, I don't remember seeing authors at my schools, because I went to a lot. So I don't remember authors coming in. But then I would read books constantly. I was reading Goosebumps. I was reading Addie Walker. I was reading a series called Replica, which I loved when I was like a preteen. It was about a little girl who was like a clone. And so it was like a spy mystery story. And I really started, just realizing that there is an author behind these stories. And if there is someone out there who writes these stories, and I can be that person too. And I had a lot of support from my family. My grandmother, my mom, my aunts have always constantly reminded me that I should go for my goals and my dreams. And they haven't, they might warn me, it's going to be difficult. It's not always an easy path, but they never tried to get me to do something else, which I think was important for me, growing up, to realize, okay, I can do this, but it's going to be work.
Right. Yeah, that's wonderful that they really encourage you, because we've talked some on the show about how as parents sometimes it's easy to you want to protect your child, and if you think something's going to be hard, then you might steer them towards something easy.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really wonderful that they prepared you, but they also encouraged you to follow what you wanted to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and could we back up a little bit? You talked about being a children's specialist, which maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that, and then how did you decide to, okay, I'm going to make the leap to being an author? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I started working with kids when I was living in Pittsburgh. I was going to grad school. I went to Carnegie Mellon for grad school, and I was writing plays. And I love theater, which is why I wrote with Mandy Gonzalez the Fearless book. But I was writing plays. I was watching theater, and when I graduated, I kind of felt like I didn't really want to write plays anymore because I was working with kids at the time. And so I saw that, I was working with kids. How can I merge working with kids and my writing? And so that's kind of how writing for kids came into play. And so I started to work directly with kids. I worked at Reading is Fundamental in Pittsburgh, and we had a Storymobile. So I would get onto the Storymobile almost every day. It was a yellow, basically library on wheels. It was a yellow bus, basically, or yellow truck. And inside on the shelf, there were library books, just like if you would walk into a library. And so I started working with kids, being like a coordinator on the Storymobile. And then I guess as you do with any career, you move up or you find things that work better for you. So I moved from that position to the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh, where I was also with an organization called Buzzword. And so we would go to, and if anybody is watching and is from Pittsburgh, they would know these neighborhoods. We would go into neighborhoods where a lot of the people look like me. We would go to the Allegheny neighborhood. We would go to Northside. And we would go to a lot of housing developments. And I felt like it was important for me, at that time to be there, to show my face, to read to kids, but then also for kids to know that, any path that they choose in life is, worth pursuing. And from there, I went to the library, where I was technically a children's specialist slash children's library assistant, but I did a lot more work sometimes than the librarians did. I love the librarians I worked with, but my workload was very heavy. But I was a children's specialist, so I would work in daycares. I would go to daycares. Kids would come to us in the library, and I would do story times with them in the library. But I was curating programs for children and reading to children, and then going to outreach visits at schools. And so I would also visit autism support classrooms and do story times there, and just have an interaction with kids reading and helping them, have them read the story with me. And it was a major reason why I really stepped into writing for kids, because I was reading so many stories of children. I recognized, well, my stories can I can adapt them for kids, or I can, create new stories for kids. And I was reading so many books that I was starting to really understand structure and story development and character, like on a different level, because something happens when you read a story to a child. You see where they laugh, you see where things fall flat, you see where they're like, turn the page, hurry up, turn the page. And so, that was just really a special time for me to understand, okay, this is what a story is doing for a child, and how can I do that within my own stories too.
What an incredible background to bring to work as a writer.
Thank you.
I'm curious, because I know you're very passionate about representation and kids being able to see themselves in stories. So talk a little bit more about that in your work, either the Storymobile, when you were with the library. Mm-hmm. You're reading so many stories to kids and you see how they respond. Mm-hmm. What effect it would have on kids when they were reading, when they were getting to see a story that they felt really reflected their lives and their families.
Yeah. So I like to give two examples of this, and hopefully I can remember them. So 2 examples. The first is when Crown, an Ode to the Fresh Cut, first came out. I would take this story by Derek Barnes. I would take this story everywhere and I would read it. And I remember reading it to, it was either a pre-K classroom or a kindergarten classroom. I'm pretty sure it was pre-K. But the kids had me to stop the story because they were mesmerized by what they saw on the page. And this was in a mostly Black neighborhood, a school with mostly Black children. So the classroom, all the kids, they looked as I looked. And I remember reading this book and the kids sitting around me and having me stop on the page that I was on, and they pointed out things that resonated with them from their time at the barbershop. And I
Right.
thought, well, this is what stories do. You know, it's opening up the world. They're seeing themselves. They're resonating with this character on the page. And then on top of that, there was a kid in the classroom who had the name, I think, King. And so just the crown, the name, it gave me chills at the time. It gives me chills to this day.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side of that, I remember deliberately going into classrooms where the kids did not look like me. I went to a lot of child development centers that I love to this day, but the diversity was lagging in many ways. And I remember walking in, and as soon as I walked into this classroom, I think it was probably also pre-K, a child said, "Hi, Brownie." And
Oh,
so I, what do you do in that
right.
moment? So I kind of froze, and I was like, did I hear what I really thought that I just heard? But it was true. I did hear it. The teacher at the time didn't hear it. And the child didn't recognize like what she said and how it made me feel. And so after that moment, I decided, well, I'm going to make sure that the children in this classroom see kids that don't look like them, read books that are different from their own experience, because I don't know what's happening in the home. I don't know if the parents are doing it at home. And it was clear that the parents were doing things at home that, made this child feel comfortable to call me that name.
Right.
And so it was very important for me to make sure that when I go into any classroom, that this classroom represents kids across this world, across the state of Pennsylvania where I was living at the time, that represents in an honest way. And that's what I like to try to do with my stories, in an honest way, show the world as it is, show young Black girls as they are, confident and persistent and wanting to go for their goals, but then also showing the world truthfully. I have a book illustrated by Shamar Knight Justice called Forever and Always. It's coming out in 2024. And it's about a little girl who is afraid when her father goes to work every day. Will she see him when he comes home? And I think a lot of children and parents are living through that. What happens when you walk out the door? So I just think it's important, whether you're writing stories or working in the classroom, to make sure that the stories you choose are representing this world that we live in.
I love that. And I love that you talk about both sides of that, because I think especially among whites, there's this real misconception that, certain kinds of books are only for like Black authors only, or something about a Black child is only for Black children and so on. I just saw on Twitter the other day that there was an author, she's a Latinx author. She come and do a free reading at her local library, and they said, no thanks, we don't have any Latinx kids in our community, which one is probably not true. Probably just don't feel like the library, but also why would that mean that she should come and read the story? Like you said, it's actually really important for all kids to be exposed to all these. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. And it's crazy to me that, we have so many books to this day. Like, why not pick up a book that is completely different from the experience that you're living, and just read, especially for kids. We're doing a disservice to kids when we're not showing them everything that this world has to offer.
And kind of underestimating them that they wouldn't fit in the book.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your books? You've mentioned some of them, but if you want to tell us a little bit about them, which I have to say, I haven't been able to get my hands on them, but I've seen the information about them on your website.
Yeah, I would love to. So my debut, which came out this year, came out January, is Fly. This is Africa. Sometimes if I wear yellow and if I wear a twist out, the kids will say, is that you? And I would love to say, yeah, this is me. But Fly is illustrated by Anna. Hopefully you can see Anna Kuhnhut. And Anna is an illustrator. She is from Brazil and she is brilliant. I urge you to check out all of her work. And Fly is a story about 5-year-old Africa who wants to compete in double dutch. And of course, double dutch is when you jump rope with 2 ropes instead of 1. And she has never jumped rope. Well, she has jumped rope, but she has never double dutched before. And so she wants to double dutch. Her brother kind of discourages her, saying, you can't do something you've never done before. But Africa knows that she can do anything on the face of this earth as long as she puts one foot in front of the other. Fly is a book about community. Hopefully I can show you. Hopefully there's enough room on this screen, because Africa goes to all of her friends and asks, hey, how do you double dutch? And so they teach her different things that can help her compete along the way. And she ends up going to this double dutch competition and flying, soaring, feeling her best self because she tried. And so when I go to school visits, I have one tomorrow that I'm excited about. I try to urge kids, that what's important is putting one foot in front of the other. It's not about being perfect. It's not about getting it right, but it's about trying. But we don't know if we don't try.
Right. Beautiful.
Thank you. And then my second book, so this is a middle grade novel. It's the second book in the Fearless series by Mandy Gonzalez. And so Mandy and I wrote this together. Mandy was Angelica Schuyler in Hamilton on Broadway. And this is about a young kid named Relly who goes back in time to urge his grandfather to follow his dreams. So I think that my stories kind of have like this thread of following your dreams, doing what you want, not being discouraged, and continuing to try.
I'm just curious, what was that? I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know we're coming up on almost 20 minutes, but what was that process like of, I've seen sometimes where authors will write a book together, and I'm curious, what is that like? Does one of you write a draft and send it to the other? Do you write different chapters? What did that look like?
Yeah, so this process was really us just collaborating together. Mandy sharing her ideas, me sharing my ideas with Mandy, and then us just coming together to curate this manuscript. Fearless is the brainchild of Mandy. She came up with all of these characters, what their wants were, what their desires were, and then I feel lucky, like within this experience, to also be able to incorporate some of my experiences. I think that, we worked well together because we both value family. We both value our elders. And so when I told her, my grandmother is a huge influence in my life, we just wanted to have this theme of grandparents within the story, and helping them to see that their dreams are worth, pursuing.
Beautiful. And then you have one more book that's coming out in 2024?
Yeah, so I have 3 more books, 2 coming out in 2024. So there's Forever and Always, illustrated by Shamar Knight Justice, which comes out, sorry, I need some tea. Comes out in 2024, about a young girl who, she worries about her father leaving for work, but she also creates a special bracelet for him to let him know that he is loved forever and always, no matter where he goes. Mm-hmm. And then the second book that I have coming out in 2024 is illustrated by Cosby Cabrera, and it is the first library, the story of the first library by and for Black America. So I am here in Louisville, Kentucky, and I like to walk around like my neighborhood and other neighborhoods. And one day, several years ago, I was walking down a street called West Chestnut Street, and I saw this historical marker outside of a library, and I read it, and it said information basically about the first library in the United States that was made for Black America. Here in Louisville, there was a high school class who tried to go to the main library downtown in the early 1900s, but they were turned away. And because of that, the leaders of this class and then other people within this community came together to make the first library for Black America. So it shares that story about the class, but then also the people who come together to make this library and the things that they did. Thomas Fountain Blue, who was a librarian at this library, and then another woman, Rachel Davis Harris, they created the first program in America for Black librarians to learn from each other and to go out across the different states and create their own libraries. So it's really, I guess, stories within stories within stories with this library. You could go on and on. But when I read that information, I emailed my agent and I was like, do you think this is good? Like, is this okay for me to write? I really want to write this story. And she, of course, said yes. You know, she encouraged me to go for it. So initially, I started off writing. I wanted it to be a nonfiction, like chapter book. Mm-hmm. And then my editor at the time encouraged me to make it into a picture book. And so it took a while to get it to where it needed to be, but I'm excited for that book to be out in the world and to tell a little bit of history that people don't really know.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. I mean, that sounds like such a great story and one that we really need to know about.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. And then, so I do have another one. I actually don't have a date for this one, but it's Come Catch a Dream. It's about a little boy who, the only thing he wants to do is spin while he ice skates, and he knows that he can do it, but he tries and fails. And it's inspired by one of my favorite poets, one of my favorite poems, which is Calling Dreams by Georgia Douglas Johnson. And the poem goes, the beginning of it is, the right to make my dreams come true, I ask, nay, I demand of life. And so I was really encouraged by just those few lines, that what happens when we demand of life that our dreams are feasible and they need to be, we can make them come true.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I also love, like you said, that you have that thread through some books about following your dreams, and I can see how that just fits right into that. And what an important message to give kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. I wish I had that message. Well, I guess I did have it when I was younger, but just to be, you know, constantly reminded, go for it. It's important.
Right. And I just want to finish up with talking about, you are going to be at the Louisville Book Festival coming up really soon. Have you done festivals before?
Yeah, I have. I'm excited for the Louisville Book Festival because, of course, I am in Louisville. It's right down the street. It's downtown, so that's extra special. The Louisville Book Festival being where I'm from. But yes, I've done festivals in the past. I was just at the National Book Festival in Washington, D.C., which was another dream of mine. I remember being at the National Book Festival in 2016, meeting Jason Reynolds, meeting so many authors that I'm inspired by and constantly inspired by. I remember saying, like, one day I will be at this festival, and I had the opportunity to be there this past September. Yes, but I will be at the Louisville Book Festival. My presentation is at 11 o'clock on Friday, the 28th, so a week from tomorrow. And I will be presenting Fly, Following Your Dreams, and then also just the power of joyful books. And following that, I will also be at the Kentucky Book Festival in Lexington on the 29th. So I love festivals. I love book events of any kind. And, you know, hope people come out. But then also, I'm always excited to meet the other authors there and to see what books they have.
Yeah, it's going to be such an exciting event, and authors like you who are making it so exciting, coming and sharing with the kids and with the readers and other authors. So we appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. Like I said, I'm excited to meet you all at the festival, and please come out.
Yes, thanks. Hope to see everybody there. And if you joined our interview late, it'll be up on Instagram in a few minutes and have it up on YouTube later today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.